But here we are. Baseball is back. Welcome into our Action Network Major League Baseball show. Our best bets for today's 7-game slate. We have a packed house here at the Action Network. Our Major League Baseball experts set to join us and deliver some knowledge about the slate. Also some futures. We have expert Sean Zerillo, BJ Cunningham, Anthony DeBundo, Colin Wilson, and Colin Whitchurch. Best bets for today's 7-game slate, as mentioned off the top. And we'll get each of these guys' favorite futures bet on the market. Our first game of the season, the NL Central favorite Milwaukee Brewers against the Cubs, 2:20 Eastern first pitch. Like I said, the Brewers, they are your favorite to come out of the NL Central at -165. Brewers today on the money line at -180. Run total set at 9.5. That is our highest total on the slate. BJ Cunningham, we will go to you first. How are you, sir, playing these Brewers?
Yeah, I like the Brewers for the first 5 innings at -175. It's a tad pricey here on opening day, but I do think it has some value. So it's Corbin Burnes versus Kyle Hendricks. Burnes obviously won the NL Cy Young last year, put up just ungodly numbers, a 2 xERA, 1.83 walk per 9 rate, over a 12 K per 9 rate, and actually led Major League Baseball with only a 219 weighted on base average allowed. And he faced the Cubs 3 times last year and just put up, again, just crazy numbers. 20 innings pitched, 12 hits, 3 earned runs, and 36 strikeouts in only 3 starts. Kyle Hendricks, on the other hand, he's obviously been good for a long time with the Cubs, but last year he really started to regress in the wrong way. His expected ERA climbed over 4 for the first time, all the way up to 4.99. His ground ball rate went all the way down to 43%. That's the lowest of his career. And then his home run per 9 rate went up to 1.5, which is the highest of his career. And he's mainly a sinker and changeup guy, which he wasn't really successful with last season. He was right around the major league average in terms of weighted on base average allowed, but it's not a good matchup against the Brewers lineup, who had a +26 run value against those 2 pitches last year. So it is a tad pricey, but I have the Brewers for the first 5 innings projected at -215. So if you can get a -180 or better on them for the first 5 innings, I think the Brewers and Corbin Burnes have some value.
Colin Wilson, for BJ Cunningham's bet to be successful, the starting pitcher has to probably thrive and get off to a good start, have some 1, 2, 3 innings. Where are you targeting the Brewers this afternoon?
I completely agree with BJ, but I'm going to go in a different angle. I'm searching for a Burnes strikeout over. I haven't found it in my markets and my outs yet, but if you can find it, I'm going to be on it today. This is a Cubs team, and I know there's a lot of turnover in the lineup, but based on what we have from last year, this is a Cubs team that struggled with righties last year, dead last in strikeout rate, and the Cubs can't hit cutters. Corbin Burnes threw that 52% of the time last year. I mean, you could pay a -175 on the first 5. I'm kind of waiting for that strikeout prop because this should be some Burnes strikeouts today. Waiting on some umpire information too. Don't have that yet, but also a key factor there.
Very good. Yeah, looking around now, I'm not seeing it, so we'll see once we get a Burnes strikeout total. Feel free to chime in, Colin. I know you won't waste any time to do so. So if you find your line, we'll be sure to rediscuss.
I'm seeing a 7.5 over -102 at FanDuel. That's
Thoughts,
one.
Colin?
That's the first number I've seen.
I didn't see a projection or Action Labs tool. It's a great tool to go in and see props for pitchers, for anything, for runs, hits, whatever. Use the Action Labs tool. So that I think that number is probably fair. I think I saw it on SaberSim, maybe 7.3. I would still hit the over on it. I mean, you just can't put value on Corbin Burnes throws cutters. Cubs can't hit cutters. It's cold. I'm on the over.
Colin, my biggest worry with that over, and we're going to talk about this with a couple props, I'm on a strikeout prop as well, is the pitch limits and innings limits early on in this season. I think that today, especially, and probably the first week or 2 of the season, we're going to see managers be very careful with their starting pitchers. Is that something you're worried about at all, especially with something as high as 7.5? If he only goes 4 innings, if he goes 5 or 6, then sure. But with innings count, I worry.
Do you want to lay a prop and give me odds right now on the fact that he goes through the lineup once and he gets 9 strikeouts? I mean, if you want to give me 25 to 1 on that, let's make a bet.
No. I'm just asking.
No, you're right. You're right. There's a game that we're going to talk about Shohei tonight, and there's an angle in that game. It's the same thing. And you're right. Yeah, I am worried about it. But at the same time, the Cubs just whiff on this cutter so much, and that's what Burnes goes to.
Who took the under on 5.5 minutes? Wilson would do a side bet here on the show. First game of the day. I want to get Sean Zerillo's thoughts quickly on this game because, Sean, we've talked a lot on our new podcast, Payoff Pitch, that you can find over on the Action Network, one of our new baseball podcasts we'll have throughout the season. You've been high on this Brewers team as it pertains to winning the division. That number has certainly moved, right, throughout the course of the spring, the late winter into the spring now. The Brewers, I mean, of course, today you want to get off to a good start, but just, are you still feeling pretty good about your Brewers pick?
Yeah, so I have the full game line projected at 163. I'm actually curious where BJ has the full game line at, because he said that his first 5 projection was minus 215, minus 216. I'm at minus 212 for the first 5 innings. So I also see that discrepancy in the value for the first 5 innings on the Brewers relative to the full game line. I think the really interesting aspect of this game is the total, though, and I'm surprised nobody's brought it up yet. Weather forecast, wind blowing out today, close to 15 miles an hour. Wrigley Field, they always hold back the totals typically till the morning of the game to measure for the weather. Obviously, because this was opening day, they wanted to get the lines out early. Some 10.5s popped up yesterday, and people bet those unders. Now, at a weather-neutral Wrigley Field, I would have put this total at 7.7. With the wind, I have it closer to 10. So I was anticipating on taking an under 11. I saw the 9 today and had to take an over 9 at plus money. It wasn't something I anticipated. It was just a number that was off for my projection. So not something I necessarily love, but I'm happy to get a bet, I guess, against Kyle Hendricks on opening day. But the first 5 money line, I think for the Brewers, you combine BJ and my projection. I think that's pretty solid consensus. We project these games in different ways. BJ, I'm just curious where you had the full game money line at relative to your first 5.
I am at minus 164 and a total of 10.6.
Yeah, and I'm at minus 163 for the full game and minus 212 for the first 5. So we're pretty much identical there.
And so one of my biggest Vegas contacts that was on that 10.5 on the open is immediately fired back on the over on 9. So to give you guys an idea that the manipulation that's going on with this line, the smartest guys I know out there hit the 10.5. Now they're going over 9.
And if you had an under 10.5, I would almost absolutely middle it at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just logical.
It's a 221st pitch at Wrigley Field. Brewers, Cubs. Brewers, your favorite this year to come out of the NL Central. Let's go to Guardians, Royals. You've got high expectations this year for Shane Bieber, dealing with some shoulder issues. Made some starts at the end of September. Last year was shut down for the majority of the season. You got Zach Greinke repping Royal Blue. Colin Wilson, once again, after 12 years elsewhere, which is just amazing to think. He's pitched 12 more years in other places, and now he's back with the Royals. Guardians on the money line, minus 125. Royals money line, plus 105. And the total is the lowest total on the slate. It's 7.5. We'll go to Colin Whitchurch first, Action Network senior editor. Your play for this game.
Yeah. So I'm down on both of these teams in general this season. And so I worry about a lot of late game shenanigans with the bullpens. I think the Guardians are reasonably favored, but the angle I'm going to go at is just the Guardians team total. Zach Greinke is not the pitcher he once was. He was a shell of himself down the stretch last season. You look at his full season numbers and you see a 4.16 ERA and you say, okay, that's solid. But he just completely fell apart down the stretch. He's now in his upper 30s, pushing 40. He's 30, 38, 39. And I think Cleveland has a really good matchup against him. The Cleveland offense isn't anything special, anything to write home about. I'll probably be selling them a lot this year. But one thing that they excelled at last year was isolated slugging. They can still hit the ball out of the ballpark. Jose Ramirez is going to be an MVP candidate. They were in the top half of the league in ISO last year, and I think they're going to hit Greinke. Those spacious outfield alleys with the wind blowing around, and the number's just 3.5 here. So I'm staying away from a side here, and I like Guardians team total over 3.5 at minus 122.
And Jose Ramirez is now a rich man, 5-year, $124 million extension. So he's got that shirt up, which there's always one or two ways of looking at that. All right, he got his money. Does he take it easy? But of course, maybe an overreaction to think that will impact opening day. Colin Wilson, your Royals are in action, sir. And yes, they are the Guardians now. Your thoughts here on Whitchurch's pick, and what do you have to add?
Well, standard par for the course. Since Sean Zerillo and I met each other years ago, I have to bring this up. I'm sitting next to a signed scorecard from Game 5 of the New York Mets and Kansas City Royals, and I just been looking at it. It's a beautiful lineup card, but it was the last game of the World Series because the Royals won. Now, pivoting to this game, I'm going to give another shout out to Matt Mitchell, our awesome producer here at the Action Network, who literally before we started this said, are the Royals winning today? And I said, you're asking me day one about this bullpen not giving up 7 earned runs in the 7th and 8th inning, because that's what's going to happen here in this game. So I agree with Whitchurch's pick. And you got to look at Greinke. Pitch to contact, spacious Kaufman. It's a doubles park, not a home run park. Wind blowing 20 miles an hour left to right. There could be some defensive issues going on today. I'm glad Bobby Witt's in this game. I hope he jacks a couple, but the number has crazy went from 8.5 down to 7.5. 7.5 at FanDuel. I'm interested in that 7.5. So full game over for me, maybe a live over for me because this thing is taking steam down. If maybe a couple, first 3 innings, there isn't nothing, I would fire on, anything live on the over because that Royals bullpen is going to be, it's flammable. They're going to be able to be hit. And the Royals offensive lineup is not that bad. That's not the worst part of this team. It's actually the best part of this team. So I do like the over, and I'm really interested in 7.5 on FanDuel.
Really happy to have all of you joining us, by the way, on the Action Network YouTube for Payoff Pitch, breaking down the opening day slate. We will take your questions, so please chime in. I'm reading a question now. Anthony DeBundo, we haven't heard from you much yet, so I can go to you here. If you have a thought, if not, we can go to somebody else. Church of Logic is asking about the strikeout totals for Zach Greinke today. Sorry if discussed already, just tuned in. Well, we're talking this game right now. Greinke's strikeout total set at 3.5. There is some juice there at minus 135. Is Greinke's number, is that a fair number? And do you think he gets there, or are you looking to maybe fade Greinke on the strikeout prop today, DeBundo?
Yeah, I would generally trend toward unders on every strikeout pitcher in the first 2 weeks. You guys already talked about why that is. I just think when you looked at Greinke's numbers, we all watched him in the playoffs, but even in the final month of the season, his strikeout rate, as low as it already was, went even lower. And he just really struggled to miss bats. And, the Guardians lineup is not, like Colin mentioned, going to dominate a team, but they do take a lot of pitches, which is notable. And so I think they're going to run a lot of deep counts and try to get Greinke out early. So I don't really see him going deep in this game, and I don't really see any value in going over that. I would lean toward the under.
And anyone else have thoughts on this one?
My only thought is regards to Shane Bieber. So we have a 12-start sample from his Cy Young season, short season, pandemic shortened, 70 innings, pitched to a 2.5 xERA, won a Cy Young. We have 50 starts on either side of that. Last year, 16 starts, 30 starts 2 seasons ago, where he's been closer to 3.5. So how good is Shane Bieber? Is he that 2.5 pitcher? Or is he that 3.5 pitcher? I know he made improvements and then he had injuries last year. So I want to say he's probably somewhere in between, but just from a general perspective, I'm going to take that 50 starts worth of data over the 12 starts where he was at a higher level.
It's also important to note that year they only played the Central.
And,
right? And that was the one big argument. They only played the
American
American League Central and the National League Central. They got a lot of playoff teams, and none of them did anything in the playoffs, and those lineups were pretty underwhelming.
Let me do 2 cents, my little 2 cents on the Greinke strikeout prop.
Sure.
Well, first off, I don't know who the umpire is for this game, and that matters a lot because Greinke is a nibbler of the corners and he's pitched to contact, so that's really important. But the biggest thing, Salvi's framing is down every single year. And if I like strikeout props over, I like a catcher, a Yasmani Grandal, from years past that could just grab that ball up here and frame it perfectly and fools the umpire. But Salvi has gone down since those World Series years in his framing. So I'd be worried about that taking an over prop with any Royals pitchers this year.
SaberSim has him at 3.25, by the way, for today. So would lean under on projection.
We have a question going back to the earlier game, which again is Cubs Brewers to get our baseball season started in 2022. NY Davy, do you like Colton Wong props against Hendricks? We discussed Hendricks, his career as a pitcher, but we like the Brewers to get off to a better start. So either Colin or BJ here, if either of you have a thought, because I know we kind of started with you guys here about this game, about Colton Wong, his prospects today. Any props that you might like against Kyle Hendricks?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I'm looking up Colton Wong's numbers against certain pitches because obviously Hendricks basically only throws a sinker and a changeup, and he's pretty average versus both of those pitches. It's kind of a larger point, but using matchup data versus a certain pitcher, it can be useful, but also we need a little bit of a bigger sample size to actually put some value on that. So I'm more interested when I'm looking at hitter props is how they do versus certain pitches, how they do versus left-handers or right-handers, that more than just the historical matchup versus that, certain pitcher. So I'm not sure what his over-under on hits is for today, but I would say Colton Wong is probably starting to trend in the wrong direction. He's getting later in his career. He's going to be in the bottom of the lineup probably for the Brewers. So I would probably just stay away from any Colton Wong props as of today.
I also I agree with you. I don't like to look at individual hitter versus pitcher matchups because the sample sizes are relatively small. But Wong has played his entire career in the NL Central. So I pulled up his numbers against Hendricks real quick, and he's 16 of 45 against him lifetime, 356 average, 420 on base, only 4 career strikeouts. So I don't like to just take that as gospel, but if you get a plus money heavily juiced over 1.5 total bases or something, it might be worth a stab.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. I just pulled that up. 1.5 over 1.5 total bases plus 105 on DraftKings.
Yeah, Cubs bullpen doesn't project to be very good this year either, so you could get some good matchups later in the game.
Okay, like you said, we'll take your questions. Go ahead, Colin Wilson.
I was going to say, just to give an education point to everybody, listen to what BJ said about sample size of pitcher versus hitter. Pitchers come out of spring training and they're throwing different pitches. The Royals have hired some professor to get, Singer to throw a third pitch. The pitchers can change their arsenals. The hitters can also change their arsenals. Like Shohei throws a splitter and nobody can hit it. So it's really more important about run value on the pitchers and what they throw, and run value on the hitters on what they can hit. So always check that over head-to-heads between pitchers and hitters.
And
I
that
care about
professor's name is Zach
doing limited data samples as well. Like if you're 0 for 10 against the guy, but you've put all 10 balls in play, I'm gonna give much more credit to that than I would going 0 for 10 with 5 strikeouts. The ability to put the bat on the ball and produce results, I think people overlook just putting the ball in play as a general skill.
Yeah, and Baseball Savant does have expected numbers, XBA, X slugging on those player matchups if you dive into those, and that's a good tool that I use when I'm if we get Dinger Tuesdays this year, projecting who might hit a home run on a certain day.
Dinger Tuesdays.
We've still got 5 games to discuss, but we are happy to backtrack. If you have questions in the YouTube chat, we will discuss these games. I'm sure we'll go back to a few as well because we will talk futures later in the show. First pitch of Brewers Cubs not till 2:20. We had some 1:00 games that got rained out that were moved to tomorrow's games. So please weigh in. We have plenty to get to. Let's move on to Pirates Cardinals, a 4:10 start. Cardinals on the money line, -180. They're your favorite today. Run total set at 8. The Pirates have one of the lowest projected win totals in baseball for this coming season. And big question about the Cards is, can they carry over their magic from 2021 in September? They make that huge playoff push. Anthony DeBundo, we'll start with you. You're into the Pirates today. You're into Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's a common and a pretty common play across our Action Network team is the Pirates on the money line. Now, the number has come down quite a bit. I'm seeing plus 160, 165. I would not go any lower than that. I think it might even come lower in the next couple of hours ahead of first pitch. But I'm really selling not just this Cardinals team, but Adam Wainwright especially. I understand that his numbers, when you compare his xERA to his ERA and his xFIP, are always going to be a little bit under. He's always going to overperform a little bit because of the Cardinals defense, which does generally project as one of the better in the league. They were, I believe, the best last year. Sean, you correct me on that. But I'm not sure how sustainable it is to constantly do that to the extent that he was. He was over expected last year. And so I'm not really buying that. Now, the one thing I'm concerned about, and BJ will talk more about the first 5, Brubaker is on a pitch count. It looks like he's only going to throw about 70 pitches. So that's concerning because I don't love the Pirates bullpen, but it is opening day. And so everybody is healthy to the extent that, JT Brubaker is a guy who, if you want to go under on a strikeout prop, I don't hate his under 4.5. It is -140, so it is a little juiced. But that was one under that kind of jumped out to me right away just because of the pitch count. And the Cardinals are a lineup that will put a lot of balls in play. They also just don't hit righties as well as they hit lefties last year. One of the best offenses in the league against lefties. A lot of that big winning streak at the end of the season came because they got to face a bunch of lefties. Just don't project out quite as well against righties. So I'm going to take the Pirates as a big dog and start praying right when the first pitch happens.
All right, DeBundo said it. BJ, why don't you weigh in? Another first 5 pick you're tracking.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Pirates first 5 plus half a run at a plus 105. So basically saying the Pirates can either be tied or winning after 5 innings. So JT Brubaker is kind of interesting. If you're a franchise, maybe not the guy you want starting on opening day, but he did have a horrible season last year, over a 5 ERA, but his expected indicators indicate he's coming for some positive regression this year. Expected ERA was only 4.67. xFIP was only 4. His main problem was he just gave up way too many home runs. His home run per 9 rate was over 2, but he had a walk per 9 rate under 3. He's mainly a slider, sinker, fastball pitcher, which is good news against the Cardinals because they had a combined -15 run value against those 3 pitches last year. And Anthony already mentioned the Cardinals 20th and weighted on base average against righties. I mean, Adam Wainwright, yes, he had a great season last year, but does anybody really think he's going to continue on with a 3.87 xFIP at age 40? Because I don't. I mean, the reality is you can't really say a lot of positives about the Pirates offense. You can go through all the stats. You can try to find positives, but there's just not very many. They did add Dan Vogelbach and Roberto Perez to their lineup, which obviously helps. Another year progression of Key Brian Hayes also helps. But this number is just too high. I know Zerillo was projecting some early value on the Pirates around plus 163. I have their spread of plus half a run at projected about minus 115. So if you can get plus money on plus half a run for the first 5 innings, I do think you're getting some value. And I really would like to avoid a bullpen mismatch between the Cardinals and the Pirates toward the later innings of this game.
You have a thought there, Cirillo?
Yes, I just want to talk general betting philosophy. All of our Action Network people like the Pirates today. If you're betting the Pirates now, no. If you show me a losing ticket with the Pirates at plus 155 today, I'm going to rub your nose in it. Say, no, don't do that. I projected the Pirates at 38% today. I bet them at around 35%, plus 185, plus 190. The line has come down. There's no value in them now. Don't tail us just because we're telling you we bet the Pirates. That's not how this works. I bet the Pirates because I think they win 38 times out of 100. And I bet it at 35 times out of 100. Now you're betting them to win 40 times out of 100 to break even. That's not how this works. We're not just tailing picks. We're betting math. We're betting probability. If you want to bet this game, bet the under. I think there's tremendous value on the under here. Anthony talked about the Cardinals being my number 1 defensive team. That hasn't changed. They're tremendous defensively. And generally speaking, over an average defensive team, they're going to gain about 5% in win probability, which is drastic. I made this total closer to 7.15. I also made the first 5 total closer to 3.8. So there's value on the under 8, probably up to minus 115. There's value on the under 4.5. I'd play that down to 4, minus 110, minus 115. I like the unders here, 2 above average defensive teams. And in particular for the Cardinals, they struggle against right-handed pitching. They rank near the bottom of the league against righties, near the top of the league against lefties, very right-hand heavy lineup. So Cardinals stuck in their bad split, 2 good defensive teams. The bullpens could get a little hairy. That's why we're splitting between the first 5 and the full game under.
Speaking of first 5 and an under, Colin Wilson, you're kind of putting these 2 things together here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to have much to say here because Zerillo really had it covered there. I under 4.5, first bet of the MLB season was seeing that winds were blowing 20 miles an hour out to right field here. But we have 2 ground ball pitchers. Adam Wainwright, one of the best ground ball pitchers, in the league, and that's why some of his numbers. He's got a stellar defense behind him. One of the arguably the best third baseman defensively, backing him up here. So with Wainwright throwing ground balls and JT Brubaker 43% ground ball rate in the 35 games that he's pitched in. I think people are going to tell you about the wind, and I live in the Midwest. It's crazy. The wind is absolutely nuts, 30 to 35 miles in some spots. So that is a factor, but at the same time, I have 2 pitchers. They're going to have their defenses in play with ground balls. I think that's a huge part here. The reason why I'm playing first 5, these guys have already said it. I want nothing to do with these bullpens today. Managing bullpen melts is the biggest thing that's going to happen in everybody's bets.
Our newest Action Network podcast, Payoff Pitch. Colin Whitchurch is an Action Network editor, senior editor. You want anything to add here, Colin, on the Pirates? Just your season outlook of them? Another team in which we go down the standings of a team in their division, and you're projecting another under here.
Yeah. Well, first I want to say that my dad was tuning into this broadcast and he probably closed his browser in disgust. He's a diehard St. Louis Cardinals fan. So sorry, Dad, that we all hate your Cardinals.
Yeah, I do.
I do too.
Hey, Papa Whitchurch.
If anybody lives in the Midwest, they know how annoying Cardinals fans are.
Yeah.
It's the Cardinals under is where I'm really looking at from a season standpoint. I think that the Pirates are priced right. I was really high on their under last year and got burned. I think that the Cardinals are not a given to be the second best team in the NL Central. A lot of people think they have a shot at challenging the Brewers. I think that the Cubs and Reds are closer to the Cardinals than the Cardinals are to the Brewers. So I'm on the Cardinals win total under. And I agree with what everyone said about this particular matchup. There's plenty of value on Pittsburgh if you had grabbed them at the right number. But like Zerillo mentioned, if it's not the right number, then stay away.
Let's move on to our night slate. One more reminder. Well, I'll give you more reminders, but please, in the YouTube chat, chime in. We'll take your questions, your thoughts on today's slate. It is opening day. Great to have all of you joining us and our excellent crew here at Action Network. Let's move to the Mets and Nationals. Mets are minus 115 in the money line. Nats minus 105. Total set at 9, 7:10 first pitch. Tyler McGill, yes, getting the nod with Jacob deGrom sidelined. Max Scherzer expected to pitch tomorrow, so we get the McGill show. And again, Anthony DeBundo, you might not think this will go well because you like an over here in this game.
I do, yeah. If you read my piece on the 10 pitchers I'm looking to fade this season, if there was an honorable mention section, Patrick Corbin would have been on it. Now, I didn't put Corbin on it because he pitches for the Nationals, who are already projecting as one of the worst teams in the National League. So there's not going to be a lot of chances to bet against him, say on the money line. But when it comes to the total here, I think this is a little bit low. I know Zerillo likes Tyler McGill. I'm not as high on him as everybody else is. I think he had an impressive couple of outings and then got exposed a little bit once, people got more to see of him. But really, this is just a fade of Corbin. I mean, Corbin last year, 6th percentile in expected weighted on base average against, 6th percentile in expected slugging against. He had serious velocity issues. He's been battling injury. I'm just not really a big believer in Corbin, who 2 years ago really burned himself out in that World Series run and has not been the same pitcher ever since. He posted a 5.10 xERA in 2020 and then a 5.62 xERA in 2021. So just a pitcher I'm looking to fade. And the Mets lineup is healthy. So while they're healthy, I'm going to try to bet on them in what I think is a pretty underrated when healthy lineup. The big question is, can they stay healthy through the entire season? But I like the additions that the Mets have made to the lineup. So I'm expecting them to have a lot of success here. And this is something Sean also wrote about, but it was the underratedness of the Nationals hitting park and their bullpen. The Nationals project as one of the worst bullpens. I just saw they brought back Colin Whitchurch's guy, Sean Doolittle. Love Sean, but not sure that's necessarily a good thing for the middle relief of the Nationals.
Why are you so into Doolittle, Whitchurch? Is it because he's got great facial hair like you? Is that what it is?
Well, he's a prominent member of baseball Twitter, of which I run in those circles. We chat. He's a great guy. Love Sean. I hope he has infinite amounts of success this year and going.
He was
forward.
A clubhouse favorite in Washington for sure.
Yes.
Amongst players and reporters.
Eileen Dolan's husband is what he should go as, really.
Yes.
Let me ask you all a question, and again, we're going to have futures later. But the Mets are a very public team, as we are all well aware of. But with the DeGrom injury, lots of hype getting Scherzer, of course. Anthony, you said it. Lineup's healthy, no question. But when you look at the Mets in April, there's more attention on this team. They're one of the favorites to win the World Series when you look at the betting odds. Do we suspect, and please, whoever wants to weigh in first, go right at it. Do we suspect a slower start for the Mets? And I'm not trying to say that the Nationals are going to knock their socks off here opening weekend, but how important is a good start for the Mets this season, knowing all the expectations, and there are some injuries here?
Well, the Mets are the opening day champions of the world, so it's not going to happen today. I don't know if you guys realize, but since losing like their first 7 opening days, the Mets are like 36-6 on opening day or something. It's ridiculous. But yes, after today, it will be more important. Just staying in the hunt. There's that extra wild card spot this year, right? So you don't need to pace for as high of a win total as you normally would. They do need to hang around, though. They just can't afford all the injuries they had last year. I brought it up, but they got down to like starter number 9 and number 10 last year. They were reaching into the depths of their minor leagues just to bring people up to start. That's how they found Tyler McGill, basically, who I think is a pretty solid pitcher. But yeah, it's they're deeper than they were last year, but they can't have these clusters of injuries. Otherwise, they're going to end up finishing under 500 again. But you
would expect a bounce back year from guys like Dom Smith, from Lindor, who did nothing the first half of the season. So there's reason to be optimistic about some of the middle of their lineup guys that underperformed, I think, going forward.
Their expected stats last year, I believe they underachieved more than any offense relative to expected WOBA and actual production. So
Jacob deGrom was their best hitter last year, if I'm not mistaken.
At a certain point, he was also their best clutch hitter. They were, I think, dead last in the league in clutch hitting last year, and that's a very noisy indicator too.
So they're screwed in April because DeGrom's hurt.
Well, usually they're the April champs. I mean, if the World Series were given out on April 30th, they would have multiple titles.
If the Mets are a new franchise, they will be terrible in April and then win the World Series. That's how
Anthony said be sure not on the Mets offense while they're healthy, and that's the only time this year that we're going to be able to say that because they're the Mets.
I did take some Mets under the minute DeGrom got announced injured because I just foresee him not making nearly as many innings as all the projections expected. But the number has come down a few wins now, and if anything, I might try to middle it. But yeah, I actually am higher on the Mets despite my shirt than people might expect.
4 games against the Nationals and 6 games against the Diamondbacks in April. So if the Mets are not above 500, it's concerning.
That's a good point, BJ.
Anyone else with a game pick here before we move on?
Both numbers, the over and the Mets money line, went out of range for me. Those were my plays, but the F5 money line was flipped. It was minus 115 for Corbin. Now it's minus 120 for the Mets. The over 9 went up. So I think I'm on the right side of those, but I wouldn't bet it at this point.
Okay, very good. Let's move on. 9:38 p.m. Eastern start for the Astros and Angels. You can get Houston on the money line, plus 100 as the road squad. LA Angels money line, minus 120. Over under set at 9. Shohei Ohtani is on the mound. We'll see him on the lineup as well. Pacoda's favorites to finish 1 and 2 respectively in the AL West. Colin Wilson, you have a pick in this game. Who do you like?
Yeah, I like the Houston Astros here. And, Shohei Ohtani got rung up for 6 earned runs on September 10th of last year. Of course, we have different lineups, and Shohei might have had fatigue towards the end of the season, asking him to do all the things he does, including stealing bases. Nevertheless, odds makers, they're always going to set Ohtani about 10 to 20 cents in the market because they know that steam's going to come in, and they know that the sharp guys that are playing overnights are going to fade him and then come back the other way. So, giving Framber Valdez, he's only got about, and we talked about bullpens are going to be, a big part of this. Well, Framber Valdez is a lefty. Angels struggle a little bit hitting lefty pitching, but he's only on a pitch count of 50. So I'm playing Astros money line. I would play it to about minus 105. I think it's trending that direction. But it's a little shaky with the fact that Framber's only going to throw 50 pitches. And there's, I think, only, Whitchurch. So this is per sources, which is Colin Whitchurch. There's one, lefty in the bullpen for the Astros. So, I'm going to take the Astros here and I'm going to fade it because the price is right.
Very good. Anthony DeBundo, you're high on this Angels team. You like them to win the West. So a good start here against a division rival, a team that is returning. They were in the World Series last year. They didn't win it, but they were in the World Series. Houston's always a contender. So this is a kind of a big weekend for you when you consider you need this team to have some head-to-head wins. And we know those tiebreakers are important.
Yeah, I've got Angels to make the playoffs, plus 150. I'm not sure they'll catch the
division?
Astros.
Sorry.
You said division. Yeah, I think I'm just high on this team. If Trout and Rendon can stay healthy, their middle to back end of their lineup and their middle to the back end of the rotation, I think is as average as it's ever been. And that's really all they needed to be. And last year and the years past, they've had so many issues with injuries and then the back end of the lineup just not producing. I think they have some high upside guys like Brandon Marsh and Joe Adell that I'm particularly high on, that I'm looking to buy into. And I think they have a shot to make the playoffs, especially if the American League East cannibalizes itself and that division as a whole struggles. Now, it didn't last year, but I also think it could end up kind of like what the NL East was last year, where everybody was kind of struggling and beating up on each other. And then before the Braves eventually broke away. So I think the Angels could get in the playoffs there, and at plus 150, I think it's a good shot. So that's what I like. This game, Sean and I have debated the Framber Valdez situation. He loves the ground ball rate. I'm concerned about the walk rate. His walk rate doubled from 5% to 10%. He did have a career high ground ball rate last year, 70%, which is ridiculous. And so I think he's a really interesting pitcher to watch out for, and someone who I will be watching closely to see, what kind of wins out there. Is his walk rate going to cause problems for him when the bases are constantly loaded, or is he just going to get a lot of ground ball double plays and get out of those innings? Also, is the Astros defense going to be quite as good in the infield without Carlos Correa, with a rookie in Pena starting there? So we'll see about that. But that's really the interesting angles here. I don't have a bet on this game.
So what Anthony is trying to tell you, if you handicap what you just heard from Anthony, is something that nobody wants to admit. The Mariners are winning this division. All right. The Mariners are winning the division. They're the only team in Major League Baseball that has never made a World Series. That's all going to change this year. The Astros are going to go down. The Angels aren't going to have the pitching. And he took a plus 150 on the Angels to make the playoffs because nobody else can admit it. The Mariners are winning this division.
You've opened up a can of worms. This is the most contentious debate in the history of Action Network's baseball.
This live stream just extended by a full hour on that comment alone.
The Collins are together on.
I think it's 3-2, right?
Kool-Aid here.
BJ, Sean, and I are anti-Mariners, and Colin and the Collins are drinking the Kool-Aid.
But the
Imagine-
Action Network Slack has the deciding vote, and they're also pro Mariners. So I'd say we
Mike
were tied at
Iannello and
3-3.
Tanner
Hugging
McGrath.
the two-way.
So hey, here's the deal. Just text me how much the bet's going to be, and then just slide the Venmo early. Just send it in
There it
May,
is.
whatever. You don't even want to look at it.
There it is. Very good. Once again, you're tuned into our MLB opening day best bet show. It's a special edition of Payoff Pitch. Brendan Glasheen here with Sean Zarillo, Anthony DeBundo, BJ Cunningham, Colin Wilson, Colin Whitchurch, all of the Action Network. Great to have you with us on YouTube. We still have 2 games to break down. If you have comments, which we do have comments for this next game we discuss, we will get to them. So please get your questions in and also your thoughts on this game. Colin Whitchurch, I'll go to you with the question first, and then you can transition into your pick for this game. But the Reds and the Braves, 8:05 start. The reigning champs, minus 180 on the money line tonight. The over-under at 8.5. Reigning champs are at home. The question coming in here from, let's see, we've got Sports and Investments asking Max Fried, thought on the Braves-Reds game. Thinking under 8. What do you think, Whitchurch?
Well, you've heard us talk a lot about first 5 innings today, and I think with good reason, considering the level of starting pitchers on opening day. Everyone's throwing their aces, or almost everyone. The Royals are starting Zach Greinke. But that's why my bet for this game is on the under, but it's for the first 5 innings under at 4.5. I love Max Fried in this matchup. The Reds were one of the worst hitting teams against lefties last season, and then they traded all of their good players during the offseason. There's no more Nicholas Castellanos, no more Jesse Winker, no more Eugenio Suarez, even though he was kind of a shell of himself last year. And on the other side of it, Tyler Mahle is one of the most underrated pitchers in baseball at this point. He's kind of turned into a legit number 1 starter. He upped his strikeout rate from 2019 to the shortened season in 2020 to 11.3 per 9. Last year, over a full season, it was still at 10.5. He's really good at avoiding the long ball, avoiding home runs. And then Fried, like I mentioned, he's a legit ace for the Braves, and the Reds have a terrible offense. I'm staying away from the full game total personally because I don't have a lot of faith in the Reds bullpen specifically. There's a lot of unproven arms there. There's a lot of intriguing high upside guys there, but they're unproven. I do like the Braves bullpen, but that's why I'm sticking with the first 5 innings under 4.5 because I think Fried and Mahle will shove early on in this game.
Dylan Wilkerson has chimed in on the YouTube chat. How about the Reds? Money line opened at plus 180, now at plus 155. I like them money line. Anthony DeBundo, you like them as well, but you have a different number.
Yeah, I think this is one that's kind of fallen way out of range here now. I did not know until that message, actually, that the line had moved. I hadn't checked. But yeah, plus 155 is too low to play the Reds here. So I will agree with Colin on the first 5 under. I also played that myself. If you read, not to shamelessly self-promote myself again, but if you read the article I wrote on pitchers I'm looking to bet on this season, Tyler Mahle was on the list, somebody I'm extremely high on for all the reasons Colin just mentioned with the strikeout rate going up. And I think he has an extremely high floor, and he hasn't hit his ceiling. He's had a couple years now where people have said, oh, this could be the year for Tyler Mahle to finally break out. And then he kind of didn't. He kind of just maintained his plateau floor. But I think eventually we're going to see that year. And I think there's a decent chance this year he has much more upside. And he's, like I said, a high floor guy, which is somebody I like to back as an underdog. But again, the number has fallen way out of range here. I do like the first 5 under. Max Fried is a classic example of a guy who he broke out in 2020, was ace level for most of that season. And then he kind of struggled at the start of the season last year. First half was not particularly effective. Second half of the season, his ERA 1.74 after it was 4.71 the first half. So his second half improvements, I think, were more a matter of getting used to going the full 162 games. And he pitched his best once he came back from injury and was healthy second half. So I'm expecting him to have a good amount of success as well.
All right, reigning champs at home just after 8 o'clock. That should provide some clarity to those of you with questions in the chat. Let's go to our final game of opening day. Padres D-backs, 9:40 start. San Diego, your favorite, minus 135 on the money line. Arizona plus 115, a total sitting at 9. Colin Whitchurch, you have a pick in this game as well, and you are turning to one of the starting pitchers to have themselves a nice night with the K-ball.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier on the stream that I was hesitant to bet overs on K-props early in the season because I think that a lot of pitch counts are going to be limited and innings are going to be limited. But the one pitcher I think that doesn't apply to is Yu Darvish. Now, there's a lot of consternation about Darvish this season after his bad second half last year. Is he cooked? Was it a blip? But the one thing that we can consistently rely upon from Darvish is the strikeout. He might give up a lot of home runs. He might struggle to limit base runners, but he's going to punch guys out. And the Diamondbacks are a very strikeout-prone team. Darvish also has a lot of experience and is a workhorse who we know is still going to be is more likely than probably any pitcher going today to be ready to go 6 or 7 innings potentially. You know, he struggled, as I mentioned, toward the end of last year, but he still finished with a 10.7 K per 9. And against the Diamondbacks lineup that I do think is going to be improved, but is very strikeout prone. I'm a big fan of his strikeout total over. It's set at 5.5, which I think is incredibly low. It's a little bit juiced at -130, but I still think there's a lot of value there.
Now, my question is Bumgarner going to hit tonight in the DH spot, or is that any fear in that at all, facing him as a hitter?
That's a good question. I actually haven't heard any rumblings about Bumgarner hitting during his starts. I mean, Bumgarner was a cool pitcher hitting story before Shohei Ohtani came along. I think he was still probably would have been one of the worst hitters in baseball over a full season if he was playing a position. So I'd be surprised if we saw him out there.
Yeah, I'm just teasing you. Just any sweat whatsoever. But yeah, they're at home in that ballpark as well in Arizona. All right, We're going to finish up. We're going to go around the horn here, and each of the analysts are going to give you their favorite MLB future for the season. Sean Zerillo, you can go first. What do you like?
I'm feeling spiteful now. Mariners under 84.5 wins. Suck it, Collins. Both of you. Now, listen, the entire projection market understands the upside with this team. I see it in the prospects, and I think that might be where the disagreement is between the projections and what people are forecasting. They have so much young talent. It's almost hard to project if all of it comes together, how good they can be. But the highest win total out there on them, I believe, is 83 from Pacoda. I'm closer to 80. The market is also closer to 80, about 4.5 wins under the projected total. It's purely a math play. I know everybody wants to bet the over this year. I know everybody wants to bet the divisional odds. Don't bet the win total over, bet the division. Take the 4-1 or whatever it is on the odds if you like the Mariners. Screw the over. But if you're going the underway, bet the under on their win total. I just think there's a big disagreement between the projections and the listed total.
A well-thought-out, researched spite bet by Sean Zerillo to get us started here.
And listen, if you are contrarian on that pick like I am, don't bet the opposite side. Go find a Julio Rodriguez home run prop for, it was 1,000 to 1. I don't know what it's at now, because this is dependent, like Sean said, on these guys that coming up from the farm system. And Julio Rodriguez, go buy his NFTs, go buy a home run prop. This is the guy.
He's still 6-1 AL MVP. I mean, considering he's starting on opening day, I think that's actionable at that price.
He's 6-1 for MVP.
Sorry. And AL Rookie of the Year.
Say that too.
God, I was like, what?
I would buy the no.
My comment was projecting 3 years into the future where he'll be 6-1 for AL MVP.
Is he going to be the new Juan Soto? We're going to bet him every year for NL MVP, but then we can't actually do it because he's the favorite by year 2.
Yes,
that's Bobby Witt.
It's actually Spencer Torkelson. Spencer Torkelson's the best prospect of the three of them.
No. BJ Cunningham, you have similar thoughts on the Mariners. You want to have?
I'm with
add
Sean.
to Zerillo's case.
Yeah, under 84.5. So taking out, because obviously the prospects are very good. Julio Rodriguez is going to probably be one of the better players in Major League Baseball coming up here. But there is a lot that I do not like about this Mariners team. So number one is Robbie Ray. I understand he won the Cy Young last year, but given his year-to-year inconsistencies, are we really going to sit here and say that Robbie Ray is the best pitcher in the American League? I mean, just the year prior to that, he had an ERA over 6 and a walk per 9 rate over 7. And suddenly he comes back down to earth, like 5 essentially walks per 9.
He's better. The Cody Bellinger of pitchers.
I don't understand that. So I'm not buying that he's going to be this number one amazing ace at the top of the Mariners starting rotation. When you get beyond that, I do like Logan Gilbert. I think he shows a lot of promise, but Marco Gonzalez and Chris Flexen both outperformed in terms of their expected ERA versus their actual ERA by almost a full run last year. So I'm expecting them to come way back down to earth. As far as the lineup is concerned, yes, they did make improvements. I like Adam Frazier at the top of their lineup. Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suarez are very interesting. I'm expecting them to kind of regress a little bit because they were playing in the second most friendly hitters ballpark in Cincinnati. Now they moved to the fifth most friendly pitchers ballpark in Seattle, so I expect them to kind of regress. I really don't think this team's going above 500. They don't have the starting pitching to do it. Their bullpen is obviously very good, but I'm with Sean, and the whole market's around 80 wins on this team. I'm only at around 78, so Love the Mariners under 84.5, and I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid.
Debundo, favorite future bet for the 2022 season?
Yeah, I'm going to the National League East, but it's not my Phillies and it's not the Mets, who I was talking up earlier, but it's the Atlanta Braves to repeat once again as divisional champs at plus 125 is still out there. It was plus 140. It came down upon the DeGrom news. I think it's still a little cheap because I think when you compare the pitching depth of the Mets, given their injury issues, and the Phillies, who don't have anybody beyond their 5 starters, it gets very hard to see how these teams compete with the Braves, who have a pretty loaded rotation that has depth behind it with some young guys that I like. And they have by far the best bullpen in the division. I think maybe the most underrated bullpen in all of baseball. So I'm expecting the Braves to win the division yet again. And I understand they lost Freddie Freeman. Matt Olson, I'm not going to say he's better than Freddie Freeman, but he's only a small drop-off.
He's better.
Is that hard to do, wearing that jersey?
A little bit. I just pick the Braves every year to win the division, and they do. And I just say, okay, I just accept that the Phillies are going to be a wild card team, but they are going to make the playoffs, Colin Whitchurch. And then they're going to win a series in the playoffs, and then they're going to lose to a real team.
Whitchurch and then Wilson, favorite future bet for the baseball season?
So Anthony was just trying to goad me into talking about the Phillies. I'm not going to take the bait. I'm under on the Phillies.
Take the cheese.
Hitting season.
My favorite bet of the 2022 season is a Rookie of the Year future. We just mentioned a whole bunch of rookies, but it's Seiya Suzuki, Chicago Cubs outfielder, NL Rookie of the Year. I got it, I think, plus 500. There's still some plus 400s out there. Yes, he's the betting favorite, or he's close to the betting favorite, and you very rarely see me bet someone at the top of the odds boards for one of these awards, but I think by the end of April, you're going to see a minus next to that number because this guy's going to flat out rake. He's 27 years old, veteran of multiple NPB seasons over in Japan. He can hit. He's a plus defender. And it's not just, with a lot of young players, you worry about how they're going to manage the strike zone. Suzuki already has that figured out. He projects for fewer than 100 strikeouts over a full season, more than 70 walks. There's just there's a sky-high ceiling on him, and there's also probably the highest floor by a long shot over guys like O'Neal Cruz or CJ Abrams or Hunter Green or Bryson Stott. So I still think there's a tremendous amount of value on Suzuki, plus 400 or better, NL Rookie of the Year.
I just wanted to say that I was going to force that one in if Colin didn't bring it up. I think Suzuki is going to get down ballot MVP votes at the end of the year. This kid is going to be phenomenal.
His projections are off the charts for a rookie. I mean, whether you look at, Zips is projecting him for 24 home runs. There's some 28 home runs out there.
I think Pacoda has him at like 3.7 wins above replacement.
Yeah.
I think people focus in on these mid-tier prospects that come over from Cuba and Japan and are like okay major leaguers. They forget about the Jose Abreu's and the Matsuis and the Ichiros that come over and are dominant immediately. I think there's a chance he's closer to dominant than like good rookie.
All right, Colin Wilson, favorite future bet for the season?
3 years ago, right at this time, the Action Network was in its infancy stages, and I wrote a piece that was the Toronto Blue Jays over their season win total. In that piece, I said, we are betting the Blue Jays over props, everything. If you don't know who this crop of players are that are coming up, we're going to be talking about them for a decade. And now I'm going to say that the Blue Jays are going to win the AL East. They've added 2 good, quality starting pitchers to their rotation, which they needed desperately. They couldn't pull that off last year. They can work in pieces at the trade deadline to shore up their bullpen if they needed. This is the best offense in all of Major League Baseball. This is the most exciting offense in all of Major League Baseball. There's going to be a lot of, and a year ago I said we're betting a lot of overs, a lot of Toronto Blue Jays overs, especially when you're playing in a single A park with a wind blowing out in Florida. But we're going to take Blue Jays to win the AL East. I think Sean would have a better read on like what that final number should be, because I know we got in at 225. It's down to
125-ish.
Yeah. So, but I love the Blue Jays more than I love the Mariners by far.
Wow, I insult both Collins with the Mariners under, and they both just fill me with joy with their picks about Suzuki and the Blue Jays. Now I'm just leaving on a cloud here. This is beautiful.
I wish I knew how to quit Userillo.
DraftKings too.
I send out hate and get back love. This is amazing.
That's a good way to close the show. Gentlemen, great job. Enjoy the season. We got 7 games, all starting with Cubs and Brewers, 2:20 p.m. Eastern start. So that's going to do it for us. Want to remind all of you as well, we will have the brand new Action Network Major League Baseball betting podcast throughout the course of the season, Payoff Pitch. Colin Whitchurch will be frequently on the show, if not every week on the show. We come to you every Tuesday and Friday during the baseball season. You can catch us then. Payoff Pitch, our new podcast, Colin Whitchurch, Action Network senior editor. Looking forward to coverage throughout the course of the year. I'm sure you'll hear from each of one of these guys as the year goes along. So for Anthony DeBundo, Sean Zarillo, BJ Cunningham, Colin Wilson, Colin Whitchurch, Brendan Glasheen, thanks to our entire Action Network team as well behind the scenes. Looking forward to a great Major League Baseball season. Enjoy the action. Best of luck with your picks today. Best of luck with your futures. And we will join you next time. We'll see you.